The Dentalpreneur Podcast. Okay, doctor, it's time to put down that handpiece. You're listening to the show dedicated to helping dentists get their lives back. It's time to decrease your stress, increase your profitability, and regain your passion. Now introducing your host, Dr. Mark Costas.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Dentalpreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Costas. How you doing, my friends? I hope you're awesome out there today in podcast land. All right, we got a brand new guest to the show today. First time on the show. Got to know him just a little bit in the pre-chat, but I'm really looking forward to this discussion today. Let's welcome to the podcast Dr. Chaz Vittitow. Is that correct, Chaz?
Dr. Chaz Vittitow. Yeah. It's okay.
Chaz Vittitow. Okay. He's better known as Dr. Chaz. He grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. His father, who spent 25 years as a dentist, inspired Chaz to pursue his field after noticing his dedication to patients and community involvement. Today, Dr. Chaz mirrors those qualities by serving those in need and lending his time and services to philanthropic efforts. Dr. Chaz attended Western Kentucky University and then went on to the University of Kentucky College of Dentistry. Shortly after that, he was commissioned as an officer in the U.S. Navy, serving 5 years stationed in San Diego, Sicily, Whidbey Island. Upon returning, he spent a couple of years as an associate dentist and is now proud and excited to own his own dental practice. Dr. Chaz, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm good. Thanks, Mark, for having me. Yeah, excited to be on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Long-time listener, first-time caller. You know?
That's awesome. Thanks so much for being on here. Yeah, first and foremost, I love your history, and thank you so much for your service. Really, really much appreciated. Tell us about. Let's start there. Tell us about after being influenced by your dad. I have one son who's interested in dentistry out of 3 sons, so I'm really excited that could potentially happen. But what was it specifically about watching your dad as a practicing dentist that got you inspired to join his profession?
Yeah. The funny part is I think he was never, Chaz, you got to go into dentistry. I think he saw, we're similar, but we're also very different. He had a very small practice and was really, really focused on, aesthetics and things like that. I think he saw me as more of a big picture guy, maybe a little more entrepreneurial. So he was never pushing on it. But I think, I just remember small things. We'd be out at some restaurant grabbing lunch and someone would come up to him or to me and be like, hey, I just want you to know, like, your dad really helped me out, fixed me up when I really needed it. Super grateful, for him. And I think I just noticed he was always there. I was never like, my dad's got to work, he can't be here on the weekend or this thing, my sport event in the evening. And then I think I just saw, he really enjoyed learning and getting better. So I think that was kind of the initial inspiration with him. And then, I was always kind of inspired by business a little bit. And I think I saw, just small aspects of that. And then he tailored off into some other things for him with some medical equipment sales and other ventures. So I think I saw it as an opportunity, to get into a field where you could continually learn, serve your community, as well as kind of spin off into some other business ventures if you wanted.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. So tell me a little bit about your time in dental school and what it was like to be a commissioned officer in the Navy. How was that experience?
Yeah. Well, I went to the University of Kentucky. It was great. I don't really know. The cool thing about joining the Navy afterwards is you get to meet people from all different schools and everything else. I think I had a good experience, made some great friends, and, I was super grateful that the Navy helped me pay for it and everything. And the funny part is, maybe to dial back a little bit, the summer that I applied to dental school was the summer that my dad sold his practice kind of out of the blue.
Oh, really?
So I always thought, I'll go work with my dad. That'd be cool. Mm-hmm. But he sold his practice to his partner at the time. And he was pretty young. He was like 52, and so that was what kind of made me say, okay, well, I think I've always thought about joining the military. That'd be a cool way to go about it. And then the military was a great experience. You learn a lot about leadership, both good and bad. You learn a lot about, different styles of dentistry from people that you meet. And, At one point I kind of thought about my 5 closest friends, and it was like, oh, I got one from Florida, one from Colorado, one from Pennsylvania, just meeting people from all over the world. And then, yeah, I mean, you mentioned the 3 places I was stationed. I'd never lived outside of the state of Kentucky. And then before you know it, we're living in Europe, and it's like, wow, this is super cool.
Yeah.
So it just gives you a good worldview, and you get to work around a lot of specialists. And I think unless you're, depending on what people's motivation are, I would always say, like, yeah, you should look into the military option if you're going through dental school, because, as all of us know that have been out in practice for a while, it feels like a ton to think about committing 4 or 5 years of your life after dental school, but then it just flies by, and then you come out with some really great leadership and clinical experience. So it was great. Loved it everywhere we lived. I got 4 kids born in 4 different places. It was cool. So
that's awesome. That is awesome. So when was it that you decided that practice ownership was going to be your route versus just associating? Because there's not a whole lot of entrepreneurial stuff happening when you're in the military, typically, especially when you're serving time overseas and stuff. It's not like you're sitting there, around a bunch of mentors that have their own private practice, et cetera. So when did that kind of come as a realization that that's the direction you wanted to go?
Yeah, I mean, when you sign up to be, like, when you're a dentist in the military, you kind of, I think a lot of people go into it thinking like, oh, okay, I'm going to kind of use this as a launch pad, do my time. Almost sounds like you're in prison or something, but do your time, kind of get out and then launch into your next thing. But then you get into it, and sometimes it's like, oh, okay, well, I really like who I'm working with. I like what I'm doing, and I'm already 3 years in. Maybe I'll just take it to 10. And then there's always kind of this magic number of, like, once you hit 20 years, then you're you're drawing a pension, you're getting all these benefits and everything. So, But for me, I think the realization came when I was stationed overseas. I was having a great experience. I loved living where we lived. But I listened to a lot of, I listened to your podcast. I listened to, shared practices, lifestyle practice. I mean, all these things. And it was like, wow. The one thing I would say was, when I was in the Navy, you don't have a lot of control. You have no control over who you work with, who you work for, even the materials and the procedures and things you're doing. And I think that I was just willing to take the risk of, like, I wanted to kind of chart my own path and go for it and try. And if I, hit a bump along the road, at least it was like the path that I chose. And so I think that probably the way I really soaked up a lot of the mentorship was, I wasn't around people physically that were doing it, but I could absorb content and read books and that sort of thing.
Yeah, totally.
While I had some time when I was serving.
That's cool. And have you always had kind of an entrepreneurial spirit? Did you see kind of the way that your dad's lifestyle was and say, I want it to be that way?
I think so. I mean, I'm always really curious, about, people, like, what motivates you, like, what motivates Mark Costas to go out and do what he does, right? Where did it start? What is it that continues to push you? I think that for me, there was a level of, inspiration from my dad, for sure. And I'm grateful for that. I was never like, when you go back and as a kid be like, oh yeah, well, I started my paper route and I had all these business ventures. I just really liked being on a team. I liked, leading and that sort of thing. So whether it was sports, I helped start a chapter of a fraternity in college. And then, I just always liked being involved and being around people. And I felt energized by that, So I think that was probably the entrepreneurial part of me. And then I think I always enjoyed being coached. And so then when you realize, like, oh, wow, you can get coached on business and, leadership and you can get significantly improve in that. And I think I just like growth, I like exercise, I like knowledge, leadership, all those things. And so I think that was what really inspired the entrepreneurial spirit in me, was just the opportunity for growth. Not that I was just like ingrained in me since I was a kid,
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, that's awesome. So this next question is kind of two-pronged, I guess. We can go 2 different directions with it, but you do have a successful YouTube kind of channel where you talk about certain things, as far as practice ownership, et cetera. I would love to hear kind of more about your own practice, the model of that practice, and some of the things that you teach on your YouTube channel.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Well, in short, yeah, I mean, I was in the military for 5 years, learned a lot. I was associate for 2. It was a great experience. It was pretty high volume, PPO driven practice, but just learned a lot of good surgical skills, talking to patients, those sorts of things. It's totally different, because you're talking financials and everything. Whereas in the Navy, you're just like, hey, do this because you should,
Yeah.
So,
and just time out really quick. When you were in
yeah.
the military, what types of procedures were you doing? Because I've talked to people in the military that are just like, I was just drill and fill, and I could make a beautiful crown out of amalgam. And then I've talked to other people where they're like, yeah, man, I was placing implants, and I was doing Whidbeys, and it was a really great experience. So where in that kind of range were you?
Yeah, well, that's the hard part. I mean, you don't know, because you might, if you go to a clinic where there's so my first year in San Diego, I was in an AEGD, and all the specialists were super cool, right? So the prosthodontists were like, let's dive into this thing. Let's do this case. Let's do multi-units and everything else. And then the periodontist was kind of like, hey, if you want to place, these single unit implants. And, so there was a really good first year. When I was overseas, there was a lot of it was very family practice style, so you're seeing kids of dependents of active duty, and, there's not a ton of specialists at the clinic I was at. So if you wanted to do a root canal, it's kind of like, well, I mean, you're all by yourself, but you can do it, if you're credentialed, and there's no specialists here to help you. And then my last duty station, it was very kind of more like maybe the first thing you're talking about, where they're like, hey, general dentists, you can just stay in their lane, do this thing. And I think that's probably the point where I was like, oh, okay, I was already pretty sure I was getting out, but now I realized that, I don't want to play this crapshoot of like where you get stationed and the leadership that's there, and the kind of how they're going to pigeonhole you,
Totally.
So it can be very different depending on who you work with and where you work. But mine was overall, of the 5 years, I would say 4 of them were really good as far as, we were doing a lot of different procedures, but I wasn't coming out of the military like, oh, I can place any implant and take out any tooth and, do full mouth reconstructions. I mean, I had to take more CE and get more training, and things like I studied at the Coyce Center once I moved out to Washington, and I was kind of getting more, I was investing in myself even more, but I had really good fundamentals, I would say.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what have you integrated as far as your interests and some of the things that you were unable to do in the military into your own current practice model now?
Yeah. So I would say, probably still the majority of it is restorative. I mean, crown and bridge, fillings, things like that. But I think that in having my own practice, and, obviously this is kind of state by state, but here in Washington, we have expanded function dental assistants, we have restorative hygiene. So I've really tried to have this model in my practice of like kind of who, not how, if someone else can do it, that it's not required by the doctor, then if at all possible, we want them to do it. So if it's numbing, the hygienist can do it. If it's fillings, the hygienist can do it. So we've utilized that quite a bit. And then the other things are just, some of the cool stuff like, PRF and surgery. I studied a lot through the Spencer Study Club and the Academy of Dental Sleep Medicine. So we do some cool TMJ and sleep things. And I've kind of given up on, I've kind of outsourced, endo and peds and things like that. So that's one of the things that, when you're first out of school and I was in the Navy, I was like, I got to be able to do everything perfectly,
Yeah.
I think that you talk to any seasoned dentist and they're like, no, you should probably pick like a few and be like world-class at it. And I wouldn't have heard that. I couldn't accept that. When I was first out of school, someone listening to this might say, no, I need to like know how to do everything. I'm just like, that's fine. But there's going to come a time where you're going to be way more effective and efficient if you can pick a few and be like awesome at it. And I promise you, there are enough patients out there that need whatever you decide on, so.
Are you single provider? Operator?
I just recently brought on an associate. So I started my practice 3.5 years ago.
How many
and
ops?
I had one short season of an associate, but I just recently brought on someone who's, been a much better fit. And
good.
So even with that, it's kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to outsource even more. Or this person can kind of do this and pick up the slack for me. And so that's been that's been cool.
How many operatories do you have? What's the square footage in operatories?
I got 7 operatories.
Awesome.
We're about 3,300 square feet.
Nice.
So I started it, and I, kind of the classic startup story. I mean, I built it for 7. I had 2 chairs off the bat, and then we kind of went to 2 to 3 pretty quick, and then 3 to 5, and then 5 to 7, kind of at different increments. It was a great way to do it. I mean, I think more and more people should consider startups if they can. It just depends on the market and the opportunity, but it was to me a way more effective way to grow into the practice that I really wanted to be in, as opposed to trying to like jimmy it into some practice that I purchased. But
for sure,
each his own.
So how was that? I mean, was it the right demographic? Did you pick the demographic based on kind of where you thought a startup would be successful, or did you find the demographic and then say, I'm going to do this startup whether or not the demographics are favorable?
Yeah. I mean, it's so hard to know. I just think it's so important to love where you live. I mean, I know that it's like, there's so many motivating factors. I mean, I didn't have the student loans, but I did have 4 kids, and, I had a lot of, other motivating things, but I worked with Ideal Practices. So at the time when I joined, it was Jamie Amos, and then Stephen Treader took over. And so I had some coaching with them. And so, the way that kind of works is you kind of pick your area, and they kind of coach you on like, well, let's run a demographics report. Let's see. And so the demographics were actually pretty bad. It was like 1 to 1,000, dentist to population ratio. And they were like, hey, this isn't great. And I was like, okay, so what does that mean? Are you telling me I can't open here? And then the funny thing was, they said, all of our most successful startups are in saturated areas, because they know they have to level up, as well as you don't really think about it. But that 1 to 1,000, the competition may be really weak. It may be like they have no website, they've got no brand, they have no patient experience. They might not even be taking new patients. And then the other part of it was Bellingham was growing quite a bit. And so it felt like it was right for a good place to start.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So, now I want to talk about, you and I got connected through Glidewell. I have I've been doing some speaking at Glidewell, and they were so gracious. They allowed us to have one of our mastermind meetings there. So we had a couple hundred people at their Glidewell facility in Irvine there. What a gorgeous facility.
That place is amazing.
Holy mackerel. Wow. Anyway, yeah, we packed the house there in their little learning center, and it was really, really cool. They took us on, a tour of the thing, a guided tour. You have the little headphones in, and they're telling you all about like Jim Glidewell started in his garage waxing up, single crowns, and now they're in 1 million square feet in the most expensive real estate in the country, basically.
Yeah,
and he owns all the buildings and all the land. Really, really, really cool story, but that we got connected that way. So they have kind of an LMS where they release a bunch of content to their Glidewell customers, and I'm on there and you're on there. I'd love to hear just more about why you got into content, what it is you talk about on your YouTube channel, because it's not for the faint of heart, man. You're putting out stuff. I remember I started my podcast in 2015 with a little bit of YouTube stuff. And so that 11 years and 7 months or something, I haven't missed a day since, 5 days a week, every single day since we started June 10th of 2015. But in the beginning, man, it was like I was just talking to my mom and dad and a couple of my dental school friends, and I would have like per episode, I would have like 25 listens, and that was me probably padding it myself by listening to it like 3 times, or at least playing it in the background so I'd get more downloads. But it's thankless in the beginning. So what motivated you to do it, and what do you like to talk about on your channel?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Mark, for sharing a little bit of your story. I mean, it's all pretty new for me. It's called the Dental Jumpstart. And I think what motivated me was, I mean, I just talked to so many dentists, even just like my peers and colleagues, and they feel stuck, right? They're like, oh man, dental insurance write-offs are eating up everything. The overhead's going up. It's not like it used to be. I'm just going to kind of stay here in this job that I don't like. And I just think, I was talking to you on the pre-chat, but I just feel like there's more opportunity now than ever, and so I just, again, like I said, I love growth. I love motivation, getting motivated and inspiring. And I felt so inspired by so many, I mean, yourself included, and people that put out content on their channel. And so I think it kind of started off, I just want to kind of tell my story, right, of what I've learned as a military officer, as an associate, as a startup doctor. And then the big things that we talk about now are just really leveraging relationships. There's so many people out there who want to help you. Not that it's always for free, right? But there's wonderful people out there. Glidewell has certainly been that for me. Not just on the equipment side, but just on learning customer service and, being responsive, and just if anyone that works with them knows like their service is just amazing. And so on my channel, we talk a lot about leadership of your team. We talk a lot about making intentional decisions for your practice, dropping procedures that really don't bring you life or you don't feel like you're really great at, leveling up on the ones that you do. We talk a lot about dropping insurance networks. Everyone obviously has their own model, but I just think more and more doctors would love to do that, and they're afraid to, and they don't know the steps to do it. Mm-hmm. So a bit of my story, I started off, my practice, we were in network with about 7 insurance companies. Okay. 2 years in, we were completely out of network. And we continue to grow and, get 40 to 50 new patients a month. And, just looking at it from a marketing and overhead standpoint, it's just like, man, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to be in network with some of these insurance companies that really aren't helping any patients, and so talk a lot about that. I've really incorporated sleep apnea into my practice a lot. And so we talk about I think there's a lot of doctors who would love to get into that to help patients because they realize it's a problem. Mm-hmm. So we talk about incorporating kind of sub-niche specialty procedures into your practice. But as far as with Glidewell, we just, I have a video that we just put on together that just basically talks about, hey, this was a piece of equipment that I bought that I thought was just like a milling unit, but I really bought like a whole team of people. And that was like probably one of the greatest investments I made to be able to go fee for service, because then we started doing onlays and same day things. And I had Glidewell right there with me the whole time, backing me up. And so that was just one strategy that we used, and one part of our team, which is Glidewell, to help us go, out of network and fee for service.
I love that, dude. So tell us, give us some insights, because I talk to a lot of dentists. Pretty much everybody in the world wants to go fee for service, right?
Right.
And
exactly.
and many people have made that jump, and take some courage. And a lot of people struggle. So tell me how you're able to, in a relatively saturated market, still get very vibrant patient flow, 40, 50 new patients per month, being completely out of network. What is the message? Are we mostly referral based? Are you going direct to consumer as far as your marketing goes? And what's the message that's getting people interested enough in your model and you personally and your team to show up for your practice, regardless of the fact that you're not accepting dental insurance?
Yeah.
Accepting, yes, but not in network.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. We'll accept it. Yeah. Oh man. It's a little bit complex. I think, what I always say, like people, you have to provide value, with anything you do. Mm-hmm. You can make the value proposition of, I take your insurance, and that is valuable to people. But I think that too many dentists get stuck in like, that's the only thing that matters to people. Right. If you're a single practice dental office, like you don't need, surely there's probably a couple thousand people in your area who want to go somewhere that has what they value most. Right. And that could be, I thought to be fee for service, you had to be like prepping 20 veneers a day and having chandeliers in your office, and like women with white gloves are walking down the hallway or something, but we don't, our practice is very, bread and butter on the general dentistry side, but we have a really great patient experience that we were intentional about. It doesn't really cost us anything. We just actually think about it. Mm-hmm. We have an in-house membership plan that people who aren't insured can use, and they don't feel like I'm going to get nickeled and dimed. We do market, we go, we do Facebook, Google, kind of the things. We use a company that, has been great for us. And then, I always kind of say like the 3 things people can choose is good, fast, cheap. You can pick 2, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to not pick good when they go to the dentist, right? So do you want to be fast or you want to be cheap?
Yeah.
And so we also really are intentional about, if someone's got a problem, we're going to get you in today. Like, you have to wait. But if you're like, well, I just want to go somewhere that's in network, well, you might not be able to get in for a few months, and then the last thing I'll say, Mark, and I'll quit rambling about this because I'm passionate about it. But I think you have to have your team buy in. You have to have a team that says, yeah, these companies are not for our patients, and these patients are our family. And so we gotta take this seriously. We gotta show up and show out and give them a wonderful experience and help them know that, like, we have their best interest in mind, not this third party company that says they do, but really just, rope-a-dopes offices and doesn't pay out the premiums. And so anyway, that's kind of high level answer. I could go on, but I'm passionate about it. And I think that more dentists could do it if they had a little bit of intention. Like 6 months, you could be doing it, at least starting,
That's really optimistic. I love that. I love that thought. Okay, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit because, you were in the military. I'm a huge follower of, you may or may not know this, but I'm a huge follower of a bunch of like high level military people. I've had like astronauts on the podcast. Of course, we've had like Goggins and Robert O'Neill, and we've had, Jocko, obviously. So I love kind of that, the basis of leadership that people can learn or at least absorb through the military. But what are your main tenets of leadership, and how did you pick those main tenets, and how do you apply it to the dental practice kind of ownership journey?
Sure. Yeah. Well, the cool thing was my first duty station was in San Diego. I was actually in Coronado, where Buds happens, and you're around a bunch of SEALs. And so one of the things I liked that they did was, you see them just kind of like marching around, walking around, and there's SEAL Team 6 and SEAL Team 8 and everything. And they all have like a mantra about them, So they'll walk, if someone else, like if you and me are both on SEAL Team 6 or something, right? We walk by and, I would say like, "Hoo-yah, SEAL Team 6." And you would have like a little thing you said back. And one of the things that they said was like, no effing slack. That was kind of their mantra they would share. And it's like, everything we do, there's no slack. We do it to the best, So, like in our team, we have these little kind of mantras we'll share, like in our morning huddle, what do we focus on today? Let's get our mind right. We have like a little chant we'll do. We have like a little book on mindset we read about stoicism, and it's just like a real quick question. It takes like 10 minutes. Your morning huddle is huge. So I would say some of those things. And then I think the biggest thing I learned about leadership in the Navy was there's a way, when I saw the leaders, there was leaders who got people to do the bare minimum. And that was usually very micromanaging, like, hey, I'm going to watch every step you do.
Yeah.
And then people do the minimum, right?
Right.
The leaders that said, hey, I'm going to bring you to this spot because I think you're highly capable. Here's the outcome I want. I need it done in a month or something. Mm-hmm. And people would go above and beyond. They would do what their outcome and even more because they just wanted to do a great job. And so I think I'm just really big on empowering people and not micromanaging. And if one of the favorite things that Jocko talks about is, in extreme ownership is if someone is not the right fit on your team, like how selfish could you be to keep them there? Like you need to counsel them, you need to give them instruction. But if they're just not meeting the mark, it's nothing personal. Just be like, hey, you're not thriving here. I'm going to liberate you and let you thrive somewhere else. And then the whole team kind of picks up the slack and the morale goes up and you get the right person in their seat. So those are just some of the high level things. But I think empowering people, having some core mantras and values that we share together and we recite regularly. So, but I love all those guys, Goggins, Jocko. I mean, there's so many wonderful leadership principles that no matter if you're in the Navy or military or not, I mean, you can absorb those and take a ton from them.
For sure. Mm-hmm. I love that the whole extreme accountability, extreme ownership thing that Jocko talks about. What do you do as a leader of your practice? And I know a lot of people are like, yeah, man, I'm trying to be the best leader I can, but my people aren't taking my lead, right? Or they don't feel coachable. Or do I just throw my hands up and say, I'm going to keep on churning through these people until I find the right ones? Or at what point do you say, all right, I see a glimmer of hope here. They're making little tiny baby steps, but I'm going to invest a lot more time in my leadership kind of capital on this particular person. When do you throw your hands up and say they're not a good fit? They presented well in the interview and they're good clinically or administratively, but they're not taking my lead, versus time to free them to a new future, like you kind of alluded to.
Well, I think that probably one of the mistakes that I believe dentists make too much, and probably this is just business owners and a lot of people, is, everything is kind of dependent on them, right? Mm-hmm. They're pulling all the weight of the practice. Like, hey guys, follow me. I'm a good clinician. I'm good at this. I'm going to do all this with the patient. And they bear so much of the weight that there's nothing really pulling the team, towards something. And so I think that you have to have some sort of something that pulls the team. So for me, when I was first starting out, it was easy because I'm like, hey guys, we got to get this practice off the ground. This is where we're going. We got 7 operatories. This is kind of the style of practice that we're going to have. This is what we're going to do for people. And then as you hire people, you're like, are you down with that? Because that's going to take some work, And so the people that I was hiring, were usually like, yeah, I'm into that. Let's get after it. So I would say that you got to have your purpose and your vision and what are you actually going to, right? Because if you're just like, well, I just want to be a good practice and help people and, make some money so I can go on vacation, it's like, no, that's not pulling anybody, So yeah. I think you got to have a good vision and a good purpose. And then I would say I don't know, Mark, I'm probably a little bit more fast to act to just, if it's just not happening, I love Tim Ferriss's, if it's not hell yeah, just cut it. It's nothing personal. But I think the more you do that, the more people will kind of take you seriously. If you're like, hey, this is where we're going, this is the new thing we're implementing. And then as you get more people on that kind of buy into that, they'll kind of pull the weight for you, and these new hires and things will follow suit. I would say the same thing with patients. If you have some patient who's just giving you a hard time, if you liberate that patient and let them go, even if they're like, I'm going to tell my friends, it's like all of a sudden you get more and more patients that are just life-giving to you. So I think we should be quicker to act in the form of hey, if you're not getting it, I think we just need to move on. The funny thing about my practice is we have 13 employees. I think only 5 of them had ever worked in a dental office before they came into our practice.
Really? Okay.
So attitude is way more important than clinical skill, in my opinion.
Totally.
So
any kind of clinical or admin thing can be trained if you have an appropriate training protocol, right? And they're eager and they're willing and they're intelligent. I think that's right. You can't teach culture or core value fit for sure. Kind of glossed over a little bit. I think this is a really important thing to kind of dig a little bit further into. The differentiators between a practice that goes fee for service and kind of flops, and didn't even kind of realize how much they were depending on the PPO referral network and the fact that they were in network to attract patients. They unplug that mechanism and they find the new patient kind of pipeline dry up very quickly. So I would love to talk a little bit more about, specifically, if you don't mind, about kind of what your patient experience looks like and how you think it's different from, the typical, dental practice in the area or those that you've come across as far as maybe your colleagues or what you've heard around town. Yeah,
no, that's great. For sure, Mark. And I think that if you just think I'm sick of this insurance company, I'm just going to drop them, and patients will understand. They'll stick with me because they love me. They've been with me for 20 years. I have another friend of mine in town. He dropped it and he just was like, I was amazed. These people that, I've been deeply close with left my practice.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Because of insurance, and I'm like, really? I thought you'd be the one that stays, so
it's crazy. It's crazy. A lot of people have that misconception. It's like, hey man, times are tough. I got to utilize my resources and my benefits. And I think, not to slow your roll, but I think what a lot of people miss is that for a lot of people, medical dental is like the brass ring. They've been working their whole life to get a job that is good enough that's going to offer full benefits. And finally, they have full benefits, and they're like, "Oh man, I have to use these benefits." They feel beholden to it because they don't understand the reality of how limiting that actual insurance is. And then they pull on like, well, I wouldn't survive without my medical insurance, because they think that to some degree that the dental benefit is going to be a lifesaver, much like the medical benefit would be. So because it's just kind of clumped together. So I think that's another hurdle that we have to overcome, and it comes down to narrative and how we communicate with the patient base. But sorry, I didn't mean to.
No. Well, I'll tell you about my patient experience, but let me speak to that a little bit, because one of the things that I think we did do well was, we did send letters to people. We educated them as they kind of came through, but people don't realize they think that their dental insurance is the same as their medical. They think that it's like completely free. But what we did was we really tried to educate people that, like, unless your employer is completely paying for this for you, this is not worth it. Because if it's coming out of your paycheck, or we had a lot of patients who had like retirees had Medicare plans that included dental insurance. And then they were like, Chaz, I had no idea. I was paying like $85 a month for this insurance plan. And I can get your membership plan for, $45 or $50 a month. Mm-hmm. I haven't had any dental work done in 7-8 years, like, what am I paying for here?
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think that people need to realize that oftentimes you are paying a huge premium for this like insurance. And then the other example that I use, this was from a mentor of mine that helps people kind of see, is like, if you have medical insurance and you broke your hand, right, and you broke every single finger on your hand, you would pay your deductible and they'd fix your hand, right? If you have dental insurance, let's just use the same thing. Okay, you broke your hand. They would say, okay, well, we can pay for like 80% of this finger this year, and then next year we'll pay for 50% of that one. You would never do that, right? And so to think that you need this insurance to cover your stuff is like, you break one tooth, you're shot, and they're going to keep collecting your premiums every single month, and then you have to pay everything else out of pocket. And so what if we just front loaded this process, got you fixed up, make sure you're healthy, and then you stop paying these premiums to these companies who are getting really rich off of you, and we just kind of like work together directly. And people really liked that, and it's like,
that's a great analogy. Best analogy I've heard, dude. That's really good. I like that.
Right. So people, that's kind of gets them in the mindset of like, your dental benefit is not insurance. Like I think you can't like mince words with these people, because if you actually say as a doctor you care about them, then they need to know that this is not really benefiting them, unless it's just like, well, I work for Boeing and they pay for it and it's totally fine. I would say I would go a level deeper. I think a lot of these insurance companies are raking businesses over the coals, because the other story I tell people is I had a business owner friend of mine who had like 15 employees. When I was first starting out, I said, hey, I'm starting to practice. If you guys have anyone who needs a dentist, like my schedule's open to the end of time. And so he went to his employees and he's like, hey, who here needs a dentist? And of his 15 employees, 2 of them were going to the dentist. He pays $65 a month per employee. He pays for it. And he said, Chaz, I'm paying for all this for these people, and 2 of the 15 are going. And I said, yeah, Jason, like, dude, that's the problem. Like they know this by industry, who's going to utilize what, and they'll base your premiums off of that. Yeah. And I was like, you could go, you can have a membership plan for employers too, and be like, hey, you only pay for it if they show up. But so you're offering a benefit to them, and you don't have to keep paying all these premiums, and it's actually going to be cheaper for you, even if they all started going. So that's my quick spiel on that. As far as my patient experience, Mark, I would say, not to get too cliche, but it really does start on the phone call, right? There's multiple, like every time we have an interaction, we want to compliment somebody in the office, right? So if the front desk answers the phone, oh my gosh, you're going to love Dr. Chaz. He's really kind. He's a really straight shooter, big family guy, or whatever. You're going to have your first visit with one of our assistants. She is so kind and loving. She'll think about all you need. You're going to love her. So we intake them. We have very strategic ways. We answer like, well, do you take my insurance? That we try to say like, hey, yeah, I'm so glad you have insurance. We are a non-restricted provider, meaning we can help you utilize your benefit, but not be limited to the care we can provide. And we're going to help you get every single dollar benefit you can out of that. Like, we have a lot of patients just like you who have done this, and it's been very successful. People don't want to feel like they're the only one, right, who do this. As far as the experience goes, when they come in, we greet them by name. We offer them something off the comfort menu, which is super simple. It's like sparkling water, chapstick, blanket, fidgets, TV, little things.
Mm-hmm.
We give them an office tour. So we try to show them every single piece of like, hey, here's our consult room. If we need to talk about anything with your spouse or in private or Invisalign, whatever, we can talk it in here. Here's our bathroom. Look how clean it is. Like, we don't say that, but we're just trying to show off small things. We show off our sterilization area. We go over our CVCT. We just show things that are like, oh, wow, I didn't even know these things were at a dental office. And like, wow, this place is nice and it's clean and people are vibrant,
So do you take them on a physical tour on their
very first time? They take them on a physical tour.
And who does that? And what, I'm sorry, I'm getting so dorky about this because this is the important stuff. So like they come in, they have their intake paperwork either already filled out or they fill it out. And then before they get called to the back office, they get taken on a tour.
Yeah, no, usually it's everyone in the office can do it, right? They're all trained on how to do it.
Okay.
But usually it's the assistant that's kind of doing the new patient intake that will take them on the tour, right? So they'll show them everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then we try to document if they have any preferences. If they're like, oh my gosh, I'd love a grapefruit LaCroix. Like, we try to document it, right? Or, hey, I'd love a blanket. I usually run cold, right? Like, they prefer a blanket. We have like TVs in the ceiling. So if we're doing a procedure and they're like, I love watching, the master's highlights or something, like, we try to even document that. But yeah, I would say that, it's usually after they've kind of had their initial greeting at the front desk before we seat them in the treatment room. We do that. And we try to be really intentional about the words that we use, right? Nobody wants to hear operatory. They don't want to feel like they're getting operated on. Nobody wants to feel like they're waiting in a lobby. It's a lounge, right? There's not x-rays, it's pictures or imaging, right? Little things like this, people think are silly, but they really make a difference. It makes people feel like, oh, this place is world-class. All you did was change a few words, That's what people don't realize, that most high service places, it's just like a little bit of intention on your communication most of the time.
Really cool.
So anyway, do the office tour. We really try to appeal to the emotional. People think when you're having a conversation, it's like people are coming to the dentist. Every conversation is practical. Tell me what's wrong with my teeth, fix it, let me get on. But it's usually very emotional, right? It's like, well, I hate the way my smile looks when I smile in a family photo every Christmas, or I'd love to sink my teeth into a prime rib. I can't because I'm missing all these teeth that I had to have pulled when I was in the Navy or something,
Mm-hmm.
And so the assistant or the hygienist, whoever's doing it, is kind of getting that emotional piece, communicating it to me. So then when I come in to do my exam, which I think is very comprehensive, we just follow the COIS model through, shout out Orcs dental software. Doesn't take us a ton of time. It's probably 10 minutes. And we just check all the boxes from TMJ to airway and aesthetics and everything else. And then whatever we recommend, we say, with your goal of being able to smile at your family photo, in December, I think I can help you. You're in the right place. We do a lot of like confirming that you've made the right decision coming here. We just want to let you know. And by the time they've heard that from 2 or 3 team members, they're like, wow, I think I've made the right decision. This place seems great.
That's cool.
I'm probably going too long, but
no,
you get what I'm saying. Like, it's very every part is intentional, and we've rehearsed it. We train every month. We block. This is another thing. If you want to go fee for service or just have a more thriving practice, like, it's the most unproductive time you'll have is if you just take an afternoon a month and you just get your team together, you buy them lunch, you leave them clocked in, and you just train on, like, this is the number one thing I would train on is, what is your new patient experience? What do you want it to be like? What is it like? And what's missing? And like, get the team to go through it. Be like, hey, let's go through it. Let's have fun with it. How do you give an office tour? Boom. And then by the time you train a few employees, then people get onboarded and they'll teach them. And it's kind of that snowball effect. So
that's really good, dude. You say these things just kind of nonchalant, but these are really, really great tips. How do people find more of your tips? Like, where are you posting your channel mostly?
Yeah, so you can go to, we have a website, thedentaljumpstart.com, and I can send it over to you. So that has kind of all the different ways you can follow, because, we'll post on LinkedIn and But most of it kind of comes back to YouTube. So that's probably the best way. I just think video content is powerful, and just the fact that, even if we're like, hey, let's talk about the 10 phrases we say in our office that really helped us, liberate ourselves from PPOs or whatever. And you can just see like my inflection. You can see like, hey, this is a scenario. Let's like put yourself in that scenario. This is how we address it. This is how I've messed up before, and just kind of telling stories of, how it's worked and how it hasn't. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would say YouTube is probably the best, but if you go to my website, there's lots of different ways you can follow it.
That's awesome. So, really quick before I let you go, just a couple more minutes. What are some of the things in doing a startup? Mm-hmm. Like you had Ideal Practices and you were working with them. Is there anything big that you wish you would have done differently? And what are the things that you did that you're really, really glad that you did?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first and foremost, people don't think, I think a lot of dentists, we are very, we're very measured and calculated, right? I mean, we love it when it's like, cool, DO cavity, DO composite, come in, boom, done, fixed, right? It's like very formulaic. But I just think that people have to realize first, like your greatest investment is going to be in yourself, right? That could be getting extra training to provide more procedures. But the best thing I ever did was hire coaching. I mean, you're talking about Ideal Practices that, this is in 2021, 2022. But at that point, I mean, they'd probably seen hundreds, if not thousands of startup practices, right? And so just to glean from their knowledge was one of the greatest investments I've made. I still have coaching and things now, but so I would say that was huge, having coaching. The thing that I wish I would have done, I wish I would have hired things even earlier, right? So most people, when you first start off, they're like, listen, you're going to be the hygienist and the dentist. You might answer some phone calls and you're doing it all, right? And I would just say, if you can build a little bit of a nest egg to kind of like hold yourself through, and you can hire like just an amazing front desk person, maybe like go ahead and even hire 2 really good assistants, and I would hire a hygienist, someone who, again, has bought into your vision. Do you want to help me build this thing? And if they're like, heck yeah, I do, then you may not have enough patience for them right off the bat, but they're going to help you build that practice so much faster. The more you can get to doing the things that you're uniquely gifted at and giving up the things that you aren't, the better, And so it's an investment and it's a risk, but I wish I would have done that sooner, because I was doing all my own hygiene for the first like 6 months. It was a waste of time. I would have grown faster if I would have brought on, the hygienist I brought on. She was fresh out of school, but even if I would have found her day one, I would have hired her.
Yeah. Really good stuff, man. So one more time, best way for people to get in touch with you is?
Yeah, I would say just go to my website. There's, the dentaljumpstart.com. Mm-hmm. You can message me through that. You can find your flavor of choice, whether it's YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram. We're putting out content, and just connect with me. I'd be happy to, if you're like, hey, I'd like to hear more about, how you handled this obstacle when you dropped insurance, or how you handled this thing that came up when you did sleep apnea in your practice, whatever it is. Like, I just think, like I said to the beginning, Mark, I think there's way more opportunity now than there's ever been. There's so many people who are willing to help, people that have their stories. No one did it, perfectly. And we all have our bumps and bruises along the way. So I'd be happy to connect and help anyone that wants to, jumpstart their career. So.
Awesome stuff. Hey man, I really appreciate it. Great to get to know you better. I'm really glad that Glidewell made this connection. Hopefully we'll meet each other in person sometime soon.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Mark.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Chaz Vittitow.